So Alex Garland's Men. So Alex Garland, who you might know as the director of Ex Machina and Annihilation, two of the best sci-fi films of like the last decade. So a lot of people were looking forward to seeing what Garland would do next. He moved into television for a little bit, but now he's back with a new film, and this film is more horror based than it is with science fiction. It's more of the current line of folk horror that we're used to, and I'll just say this right away. This is similar to with Robert Eggers' The Northman. This is I believe this is Garland's third film, and it's his weakest film. That being said, it's the weakest of his three films, but I still feel like this is a pretty damn good film with a lot to explore. And the one thing I think I'm really going to love about this film a lot is that it is incredibly provocative. I loved Ex Machina. It does have a lot of a handful of interesting and intriguing ideas and a handful of shocking moments. I loved Annihilation because it is brilliantly cerebral and contemplative, and has that amazingly trippy sequence towards the end where you see kind of the alien forming out of Natalie Portman's blood. But with Men gets almost entirely lost within its surreal scope. That it is really gonna it's gonna evoke quite a lot of emotions out of people. So the premise of Men is that it takes place in an English countryside where this woman Harper, who's played by Jessie Buckley, is trying to get away from her past. She's just gone through a terrible breakup, and when I mean terrible, I mean her boyfriend was abusive and violent, and basically he went into a fit when Harper tried to leave him, that he committed suicide. So there's a lot that Jesse's trying to get away from, and decides to go to live in this little it's not quite little, but it's a pretty big estate. It's basically a vacation home out in the English countryside. And it seems nice and quiet. There's a village not too far off, but it's just a beautiful little location. There's plenty of room in there. And yeah, it seems like a great place to relax and get away from it all. Unfortunately, she can't get away from it all because she's being stalked by a naked man. At first we see the naked man first, he's kind of looming in the background here and there, and she always misses him. But the more that Harper explores of the it explores kind of the paths and the woods, and the all the little tunnels around this town, she notices this man keeps following her. It's just he will not stop, and tries to get into her place at one point. So she's trying to deal with the stalker, and at the same time she's finding that there isn't much help. She calls the police, and she thinks the police will handle it, but they really don't. She tries to she tries to tell this to the person who owns the vacation home, but he doesn't seem like he can do much. He's a kind person, but he also doesn't seem like he's that capable or believe her that much, or there's always this kind of this you can sense there's something deeper under the surface with him, where he's almost chillingly polite and passive with a lot of stuff. But she also has to deal with the fact that when she visits local church, she tries to kind of get some of this past off of her chest, and the priest there basically insults her, more or less. And when I say insult, I mean she basically blames Harper for the death of her boyfriend, which is ooh, it's yeah. And the big twist, well, it's not the biggest twist, but kind of the little bit of a twist here is that Rory Kinnear is playing most of the characters within Men. He's playing the person who owns the holiday home. He plays the priest here. He doesn't play the husband, fortunately. If he did play the husband, then it would really have this kind of an extra layer of creepiness to it. And also, it would seem creepy right at the gate. You want to ease the audience into this kind of weird cerebral type horror, which the film does pretty good. It's mostly because like the film is, even though like I believe this film's only like 100 minutes long, and it's like it's incredibly slow paced. Like it relies on very little dialogue. It's diced up. It's diced up a little bit non-linearly, and by the time you get to the third act, it becomes like just slathered in just like cerebral metaphor. Because by the time you get like, I don't quite want to spoil the finale, just because I think it has to be seen to be believed. But suffice to say, it involves a lot of body horror. It involves like body parts being chopped up in weird ways. It involves Harper still being stalked, and it involves Rory Kinnear being placed in a situation that you wouldn't expect for men to be in, and basically like there's this huge grotesque kind of like metamorphosis that keeps going and going and going until you get to the end, and it kind of arrives at this very abrupt punchline of what it is that Harper's trying to deal with and how she feels around men, and basically what the desires are from these people who look down on her. So, and the thing is, like, I almost wanted to be in the theater opening night just to see the reactions from like a huge crowd, because I saw this with our small press group, and you know, we're watching this with like people who have seen like, you know, all the Cronenberg films and stuff like that, so they're used to like this kind of bizarre nature. And the thing is, this is definitely, like I said, this is probably Garland's worst film, only because I think it's gonna be his most provocative. Like if audiences could get into stuff like I think most people got into Ex Machina, and I think a few people kind of dug Annihilation. Men is like the deep end of just the bizarre nature of just horror and surrealness, that it is going to be deeply polarizing. There's not going to be any middle ground here. People are either going to love this film or they're going to hate it. And I get the feeling, because the film is so entrenched in its surrealness by the end of the film, and because it ends so abruptly and doesn't give you like the easy the easy resolve or give you all the answers immediately, it is going to frustrate a lot of people immediately. So like the initial reaction from a lot of people, I would not be surprised if people have gone to see this in the theater and they come out with just a whole bunch of just angry people, just angry at what this film was trying to do by the end of it, and just frustrated. Like even if you do grasp like the bigger metaphor of what's going on here and what the film is trying to say about gender relations, there's still going to be a lot of people who are going to be like pissed off. They're going to be like, yes, I understood what was happening in the ending there. I get it. I'm not lost. But you could have had a better punchline there. Like it's almost like the No Country for Old Men of folk horror. You're going to get a lot of people who are just going to either love or despise this abrupt ending. However, what I think is going to be more interesting here is the reaction over time. I get the feeling like watch everyone's reactions what happens like a year from now. Because I get the feeling like a lot of people who might have this initial reaction, I get the feeling that if they let this film stew a bit, think about it a little bit, and then come back to it after like many weeks or months or even a year, there might be a different perspective on it. Just because I think like this is one of those films, like I remember getting out of the theater just thinking, man, that's, you know, it's not as strong as Garland's other stuff because it felt like there was more going on. But at the same time, just how it crafts this narrative about women feeling like, you know, that basically all men kind of like look the same, and all have this kind of like nature of looking down on you, having this like this weird desire for love that doesn't feel as reciprocated. I think it's just so provocative that a lot of people, I think it's worth dissecting. Like it feels like you've got to let this film stew a bit and, you know, think about it a bit more, because it feels like there's a lot more going on. Like even if you grasp all the allegories and everything that's being said here, it feels like there's a bigger picture here. And for that, I still kind of like the film. I definitely agree it's not as strong as Garland's other films, and it's definitely not as serviceable for most audiences. But if you're willing to see a challenging film, an ambiguous film, and a film that doesn't give you all the answers to what it is trying to say with its bizarre horror. I think the film works. I actually really enjoyed this film, and I feel like I've got to see it at least a few more times just to get a bigger sense of what it's trying to say and whether or not it's actually saying something bigger than just like like the dangers and intensity and the paranoia that comes with gender relations here. So I think over time this film actually might be a lot better than it is right now.